Prometheus, your friendly neighborhood personal trainer, coach. Man, right? Now, for today's video, I don't have my other device, so unfortunately there will not be any music. I'm still going to figure that out. But we'll work on that maybe for next time. I'm thinking about playing some of my own music, but I don't want to really push that on people. So if you're interested in the music I make, let me know. Maybe in the comments or a message or whatever. Maybe I'll play for y'all sometime or show you the type of music I make. For today's topic, as you can tell by the thumbnail, we're going to talk about what to do if you find yourself in a position where you are either, hey, what's up, that guy 6, how you doing? Welcome. Thank you for being here. We're going to talk about what to do if you find yourself in a position where you maybe have less fitness or less money than you would like to have. Now, I'm sure we'd all like to have a little more, right? Why not? But I think some people are more in need than others. So if I can share some of the things that have worked for me, because I have certainly found myself in a position of being without health and without wealth plenty of times in life, right? And I like to think that I've made it to a point where I have all the things that I wanted a decade ago. So maybe I can help somebody out. I won't waste time. I'll jump into it and then maybe get in a little more detail as we go. If you want to ask me any questions, feel free. The chat's open. Tell me whatever you want to tell me. This is for y'all. Ask me whatever you want to ask me. But the very first thing I can tell you when it comes to both money and fitness is you want to take out that ruler and you want to measure. You want to find out how bad is it, man. I know when I first started something like personal training myself, I didn't take the time to measure my arms, my legs, my neck, certain things that by now I've grown. What's up, Perpetual? Happy Sunday. And I think one of the best things you can do when you get started is measure accurately. I know myself, at least, when my body or my money wasn't in a situation that I felt proud of, I didn't really want to look at it. I didn't really want to think about it, right? I kind of avoided it in the mind. And I think that's natural to do when it's a pain point, right? Most people are not happy about the areas that, oh, that's what's up. It's Monday in Australia. That's funny, man. It's Sunday here. But that's a pretty big time difference. So y'all are in the future. That's what's up. Maybe you can tell me what's going to happen tomorrow. Just kidding. But that measurement step is very important. You want to take accurate measurements because that way you'll be able to notice week after week, month after month, if and when you make some progress, right? And also, it's very hard to improve something that you don't really have an accurate picture of. Thank you. So the first thing that you can do is you can decide you're going to work on this. You can decide you're going to improve it, right? Now, what a lot of people will do is they'll jump right into a program or a plan. I do think a plan is important, right? If you fail to plan, you do plan to fail. I believe that wholeheartedly. But that first measurement stage is very important. When it comes to fitness, you want to track before you change anything. What do I eat every day? What's my activity like every day? What's my sleep like every day, right? You can use apps like MyFitnessPal to track your eating. You can use smartwatches and things to track your activity and your sleep. But I'll be honest with you, my personal favorite way is the old school way with a pen and a paper, you know? I think there's a reason why they're called magic spells and it's called spelling, There's something very powerful about putting ink to paper or graphite to paper. I think that does something. So the first thing you can do if you're able to is grab yourself a notebook, right? Should be like $3 to $5. Get yourself a notebook and dedicate it to either your body or your finances. I think that's a very good idea, right? Back when I used to do some trading, I did okay with trading cryptocurrencies. I had a notebook. Every trade I made, I logged in that. Very important for tracking. The thing that I noticed at the beginning of my journey is when I actually wrote down everything I ate in a day or everything I did in a day, I was surprised when I looked at a whole day. It was actually a little different than I expected it to be. My idea of what I thought I was doing was a little different than what I was really doing in reality. You know what I mean? So I think taking away that chasm between what you think is and what really is a very powerful experience. You might notice, oh wow, I thought I was doing this, and I already see an area that I can improve that I thought I was doing already, that I'm willing to do. It's not always something that you have to muster up that you haven't done yet. You know what I mean? If I thought I was eating so many calories and then I do the math and it looks like I'm not eating that, I'm willing to eat a little bit more, right? Or a little bit less. So that first measurement stage is very important, right? You want to get a notebook. You can use the notes in your phone. You can use whatever, but my personal favorite is a piece of paper with a writing implement. Now, my favorite ink to use is the blood of my enemies, but you don't always have that accessible to you. So you can use a red pen if you want and pretend it's that, right? But at the end of the day, you want to have some type of record-keeping metric. You know, it's very important. So I can't emphasize enough, the first thing you want to do, if you find yourself to be not in the physical shape you want to be in, or you find your finances to be in a place that you're really not happy about, is take that measurement step so that you take an accurate picture of reality and then anchor yourself to reality and leave whatever the belief was and root yourself in what actually is. I think that's the most important first step if you find yourself in worse shape or worse financial shape than you want to be in. And you'll notice these two things, they're not that different. Accumulating fitness and accumulating money are very comparable, right? But you'll see that. So, now that you've taken an accurate measurement, you've taken the time to measure this, I recommend 3 to 5 days. 3 to 5 days to really measure it, because there may be some differences in patterns and behaviors, right? You want to look at the span over 3 to 5 days. Maybe with money, you want to look at a week. Now, if you use a debit card and a bank account, they may already be tracking all of this for you. So it may be as simple as, printing out your transactions for the last week. Some of this technology does track that, and that's a nice thing. So if that's already been recorded, wonderful. I would still take the time to write that over into a notebook, because the same way that when you're in class and you're taking notes, that's part of the learning process. You know what I mean? And we all have to admit that if we don't have something we want, it comes down to some amount of knowledge that we don't have. We have to learn. Why don't we have it? What do we need to do? So, I will mention in my cup today is green tea. I'm a big fan of green tea. I swap coffee out with it. It digests a little easier. It's a little less caffeine, I think. I like it for me personally. I will say the human tolerance to a compound like caffeine is very elastic. So the more you drink, the more your body will adapt to it. And the less you drink, the more sensitive you'll become to it, for what it's worth. But let's say you've taken that step. You've taken the time to measure these things, right? Your next step is you need a plan. You need a program, that there's some evidence that this works. So when it comes to fitness, maybe find somebody who has the results you want or who's been coaching people for a while. This is where I have to mention, I'm one of those people, right? I coach people. You might not want to look like me. That's fine. I help a lot of people look like they want to look like. You don't have to run my program or work with me at all, though. After you take your measurement stage, you want some type of plan or program that's going to improve those metrics day over day, week over week, month over month. Now, at first, you might not hit the whole program. Or maybe you're like me, where the first week or 2 weeks, you run 100% of the program, and then the discipline has to kick in after those couple weeks. I know that when I've audited myself and studied myself as a being, I tend to start off very strong, and then I'm more likely to kind of falter off and waver as time goes versus people that start out a little low in adherence and build that up over time. I know when I observe myself, you give me any program, day one, I'll run it 100%. Day two, I'll run it 100%. And it starts to become more difficult for me the later into it that I go. I have some people that I coach, they start out at 60% adherence, and then they slowly go up week after week. I don't think either is better or worse, because either way, you're kind of battling the part of you that wants to break program, right? The same way with fitness. You might have an exercise plan or a meal plan. It's only going to work if you stick to it and run to it. The same thing applies to something like money. You might do an audit over a week and see, man, I spend a whole lot of money on this. And next week, I'm not going to do that. Next week, you actually have to not do that. Now, usually there's a reason why you're spending these money on these things. You know what I mean? If you don't take the time to go buy groceries, you might have to buy some fast food, or what are you going to eat? You know what I mean? I know that's one thing that saves a lot of money. If you take the time to go buy groceries instead of buying each meal out, you'll save money in the long run. Maybe you can be able to eat a little more, eat a little better. You'll have more control over the food you put in your body, right? Now, a lot of people, when they look at money, they think, I just have to make more of it. I just have to make more of it. Granted, if you're not making enough of it, that might be part of the issue. It could be. But you'll find that out when you take that measurement stage, right? You might find out you're making plenty of money, and the way you spend it is actually that issue. You know, the same way that with something like fitness and health, you might find out that you're hitting all of your workouts and you're not really eating properly. Or you might find out that you're eating all the meals you planned on eating, and the workouts are where you kind of falter off a little bit. Or you might be the type of person where you eat every meal you have programmed, and then you add snacks in that aren't part of the program, right? The same way. Maybe you stick to your financial plan, and you go to the grocery store, and then the next day, rather than cook those groceries, you still eat out. Now you're not really sticking to the plan. Those groceries don't do you any good, because the whole point was you're supposed to cook and eat those instead of going to fast food places or restaurants, right? So, step one, you want to accurately measure these things. A lot of people avoid areas of life that aren't really going well for them. If you don't take the time to weigh yourself, look in the mirror, measure your waist, measure your arms, measure your neck, you're not going to be able to measure next month if you've improved those things at all. Now, here's where you want to deploy a little hope. Even if when you're doing that audit, it's a bit of a negative process. Even if day one, when you measure your body or you measure your money, and it's not where you want it, the whole point of this is you have to keep in mind these things are going to improve. You're doing this to improve those things, right? It's not locked in. It's not set in stone. Looking at it actually gives you the ability to do something about it. If it's a big question mark that you just kind of ignore, there's not a whole lot that you can do about that, right? So, just to recap, first thing you want to do, measure these things accurately. The second thing you want to do, set up some type of plan or program that's going to improve these things. And then it gets a little easier. All you have to do after that is stick to your plan. If today you made a couple mistakes, try not to make those tomorrow. And then every single week, once a week, measure those things again. Now keep some type of record of where the measurements were when they started. Week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. And the same way that you can plot these things on a graph and see the directions that they're going, This will give you a picture of if your program is working or not. What I recommend is give a program 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks to really work. You might not have everything after a week. It might take you 3 weeks to dial it in and even start running the program properly. But the right program will yield results within the first 6 weeks, right? This tells you the kind of next thing that you want to deploy while you're doing this. It's going to take patience, right? You didn't mess your money up. You didn't mess your body up overnight. So you're not going to fix these things overnight either, right? Slow in, slow out. But the whole point is, if you correct the trajectory, you start to improve these things, then just as much work as you put in, you'll have that momentum built up. You know what I mean? I can talk about how when I quit steroids, for example, I was very worried that I was going to walk into the gym and not be able to do my lifts, not be able to hit my program. But I'm forgetting the fact that I ran my program for years before I ever touched a steroid. And even during something like my drug use, I trained hard and I trained consistently. And that's something that has momentum left over now for me. I might not be doing the same weights I did back when I was all juiced up, right? But I can hit the same program I used to hit, maybe even a couple extra reps on a couple things, because of all those workouts I didn't skip and all the work I really did put in. You know what I mean? The same way that when you're better at not spending money on certain things, the next time something tempts you or tries to distract you or pull you or bait you into spending money on it that you want to spend and keep for something else, you're going to look at that and go, nah, this reminds me of that other thing that I don't buy anymore. You know what I mean? I no disrespect to people that do it, but I decided that pretty much everything that's too addictive, I'm going to avoid for a little while. So even if I can still call myself sober if I smoke cigarettes, even if I can still call myself sober if I go and gamble, even if I can still call myself sober, right, if I go and trick off a bunch of money on a woman. These are the type of things that would remind me of when I spent my money on drugs, right? And now for me personally, that I don't spend my money on drugs anymore. I don't even have to make more of it. I can make the same amount that I used to make and pile it up because it's not leaking out into that thing that it used to leak into, right? I'm not flushing it away every single day or week or month any longer. So, I used to not measure that. I used to not look at if I spend this much money on weed, how much money is that per week? Because in my mind, that was non-negotiable, right? That wasn't going anywhere. So why look at it? But that was a piece of avoidance that caused me to not do what I needed to do the whole time, right? So, to recap one more time. First, you measure. Then you come up with a plan. And then you don't have to make the plan yourself. You can get it from somebody else. There's a ton of plans online. And if you don't know who to believe, look for who has the actual results and who came from somewhere where they didn't. Now, if somebody's all lean and veiny and they've been that way for their whole life, they might not know how to change their physique, right? Somebody who's been rich their whole life might not know how to come out of a financial hole, right? So it's very important that you can see their trajectory. And I think that's what's also very important. A lot of people might look at me and think, man, he looks like a normal-sized guy. You never saw me when I was 103 pounds. Maybe I should post more pictures of that. You haven't seen the changes I've made to my body over the last 15 years. You know what I mean? The same way that you don't have access to my financial statements. And you can't see how much time I spent with a negative checking account. How much time I spent every time I received money, spent it the same day or the same week. Or spent it before it even came in. You know what I mean? I did that a lot. And it didn't matter how much I was making. Because as much as I made, that's how much I was planning on spending. So you can't pile anything up. You know what I mean? The people that want to gain muscle, it's the same thing as gaining money. More has to come in than goes out. The people who want to lose fat, it's the exact same principle as cutting out your debt, right? You need to chip away at it until it drops down to zero. These concepts are very simple. We all know how to add and subtract. The math isn't the difficult part, I can tell you right now. The hard part is breaking bad habits and building up more momentum. What the brain will do is it will lie to you. Because I can tell you right now, there's a line that might say more money, more problems. I can tell you more muscle, more problems. Those are the problems you'd rather have than the problems that also come with not having enough of these things. Right? There's problems everywhere. You got to decide, which problems do I want to have? You know what I mean? As a business owner, I'd rather have so much inbound messages and calls that my problem is I don't know how to take them all, versus my problem being the phone being dead, the inbox being dead, and not having any movement. You know what I mean? I'd rather have the problem of knowing so much that I have to figure out what knowledge do I want to use today, than having the problem of I know so little, I have to go and get that still. You know what I mean? So it's the type of a thing where you can't talk yourself out of it or be afraid of it. And you've got to deploy a spirit of optimism and hope. You've got to have hope. One of the best things I've ever heard. Now, I've been inspired by a lot of other personal trainers. One thing that I'll do as a personal trainer is I will let just about any trainer that I think is decent coach me or train me for at least one workout, at least 1 month, right? Because I know there's something I can learn from them and incorporate into my own business. I'll never forget one of the better trainers I've ever worked with. I sat down with him and I said, this is my goal. I told him what my goal was. Now, before he said, here's the program, here's the work, here's the meal, the first thing he did was he looked me in the eyes and he said, I believe that you can do it. I believe that you can achieve this goal, right? And he meant it. I could tell he meant it. And that was a very important stage in the training process. So one of the first things I'll do when I work with a client now is I'll say, hey, what are your goals? Why? So we can really dig into it. And then I'll be honest. You know, if your goal is to become 6 inches taller, I have to be the one that sits there and gives you the bad news and says, hey, we're not going to be able to do that. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, I don't want to be the one to tell you this, but you can't have that. You know what I mean? But if your goal is to gain muscle, if your goal is to lose fat, if your goal is to get out of debt, if your goal is to pile up and make a little more money so you can buy some of the things you want to have, or so you can pay for somebody who you want to really help out and support, I'm happy to tell you, you can do those things. That's all within your power and within your control. Those are things that you really can do. So, if you find yourself not in the shape you want to be in, not with the money you want to have, one of the best things you can do is first do something about it and tell yourself, I'm going to fix this. I'm not going to let this get worse, right? Because usually the reason why things are bad is because they started out okay, then they got worse. And then they got worse, and then they got worse. You got to turn the ship around. So the first way you do that is measure. Measure, 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 measure. The second way you do that, find a program, stick to it. And then the third thing you have to do, that you can just do this forever now, is measure, refine, right? On Sunday, sit down, look at the week. How hard did I stick to the program? Did I hit all my meals? Did I hit all my workouts? Now you're going to hit a point where maybe you run the program for such a long time that results stop coming in. You know, if you get stronger, you get more money, you get whatever it is, it might level off. Now, if things level off for long enough, you know what time it is? It's time for a more extreme or more aggressive program. It's time to take things up a level, to a level that maybe if you tried to start at would have been too difficult or wouldn't have really worked, right? So these things don't have to end or get stagnant, but that's where you start to realize the goal of this isn't to finish it ever. You know, once you start the improvement process, the same way that once you start the destruction process, You can destroy everything in your life until it's gone, right? Until you're in the penitentiary or until you're in the graveyard, right? You can push things far, 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 far. Or the same thing works with improvement. You can slowly improve and improve and improve your life until you get to an altitude that you didn't even realize there's still more steps above that, right? You might get to the top of that first mountain that you saw and realize, damn, there's another mountain over there that's even higher up than this one. There's a higher altitude than I've ever even considered. These are one of the more beautiful aspects of life because you get to surprise and inspire yourself and other people, and you get to show people levels that they didn't even know existed. You know what I mean? You get to the point where you've built enough health for yourself, you've built enough wealth for yourself, that now you want to build a legacy. You want to see how many other people you can get healthy and you can get wealthy, right? And then you want to show them what to do with that. Because the thing that a lot of people don't understand is power corrupts. There's a lot of power in looking and feeling really good. There's a lot of power in having a lot of money and knowing what to do with it. It's very difficult not to let these things corrupt you and pull you into a negative or evil place, right? So one of the best challenges you can give yourself is remember where you came from, remember where you're going. Don't use these things to bully anybody. You use them to help people, right? You get to a point where the reason why you want your body to look real good isn't so you can make somebody else's feel or look bad. If anything, it's so that you can show that, hey, as good as I feel, as good as I am at this, there was a time when I really wasn't, when I was even worse than you at it, right? This is just applied effort every single day, every single month. The same way that there are people out there who know things I have no idea of anything about. So they have levels of health, they have levels of wealth that I can't comprehend, right? Because they're at a level that I can't even see yet. And I always recognize that there's a bigger fish, but you get what you pay for and you don't get what you pay for. So I'll be dead honest with you. One aspect that makes the whole growth trajectory, whether it's for health or money, a lot easier is you get an actual coach, you get an actual mentor, you work with somebody who can pay attention, put both their eyeballs on you, and make sure that you get there, right? If you didn't take quizzes, if you didn't take tests in class, you'd have no way to know if you even learned what you're supposed to learn or not, right? There's a reason why when you have an educator, this person quizzes you and tests you after they teach you. And if the quizzes and tests do the job that they're supposed to do, you're not able to go on to the next level until you can pass and defeat those quizzes and those tests. Now, if as a learning experience, day one in a classroom, you were given the final exam so that you could take the whole thing and fail it, you would see a very accurate picture of day one, this is what I know. Day 100, day 200, day 300, this is what I know. Now, most educators don't do this because you would fail that test. And why give somebody a test that they're definitely going to fail? But in my opinion, I think not only would it be useful to give everybody the final exam on the first day of class, so that if anybody's able to pass it, don't waste their time with the class, right? Go ahead and move them on. And then every single person that fails it, now they know what they're going to sit there and learn. They see an accurate picture of this is what I'm going to be able to do at the end of this course. And then when they go back in there and they pass that test, they'll remember what it felt like to take it and think, I have no idea what any of this is. And then they'll also see the difference between what they've been educated, what they've been taught, and the work that they've put in and how that's paid off, right? It's the same thing with muscle. It's the same thing with losing fat. It's the same thing with making money, right? The only difference is deep, deep down, whether we hide from it or not, we've already given ourselves this test. We've already graded ourselves. Some part of us already feels proud or ashamed of what we look like, of what we do with our money, of how much of it we have, you know. Now, these reference points are very important. It's good to have a goal. It's good to have a role model. I don't think there's anything wrong with seeing somebody who's super jacked or who drives around Lamborghinis and lives in a huge mansion, as long as what that does is inspires you to push and shows you that that's possible, right? Not if that puts you down and just makes you bully yourself because you're not already there, right? Something to think about. What a lot of people do is they get jealous. There's a lot of people who see certain people with health or with money and they think, man, they were born with that, right? I can tell you from personal experience, I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to hide. I came from a well-off family and I was born with pretty decent genetics, right? The difference is what belongs to them doesn't belong to you. So sooner or later you hit a point where that can't give it to you anymore. You know what I mean? And some part of you knows it's not yours. If you're born with good genetics, by the time you're about 30, my age, the way that you eat and the way that you live is going to show up more in your body than whatever genetics you were born with, right? Whatever family you came from, it's not going to matter by the time you're 30 as far as your muscle goes. Now, generational and institutional wealth is a little bit different, but the way that the world goes is sooner or later, you're going to have to earn what you have, or it's going to be removed from you, right? It's going to be taken from you. I can give an example. Something like this watch that I'm excited to own, right? It's worth between what, $7,000 and $10,000. Now I'm sure a big part of why I have that is because of where I came from. But if I was still doing drugs, if I was still in a place where I didn't really deserve it, I would have had to sell this, turn it into cash, and put that into my body. Or I would go to the wrong place, not really value it, and somebody would knock me the fuck out and steal it right off of my wrist, right? Or if you go even farther with it, you go to the really wrong place and you don't really value it, somebody else will kill you for it and take it from you. People have died for a lot less, you know what I mean? If you want to buy a murder in most places, it costs less than something like this watch is worth. So people who have jewelry like this and people who move around a certain way, it's very important to recognize if you use it to bully people or put them down or try to make yourself feel above them, somebody's going to try to take it from you, and sooner or later somebody's going to be able to. So, one of the beautiful things about health and fitness and a physique is you can't buy it. You can't sell it, right? Nobody can take it from you. But the same is true to a certain extent for the money you make, right? And what you do with it. If you can pile up $1,000 one time, you can do it 7 times. If you can do it 7 times, you can do it 70 times. This is what a lot of people don't get. You know what I mean? The same way that if you can lose 1 pound of fat, you can lose 70 pounds of fat. If you gain 1 pound of muscle, you might hit a certain genetic cap sooner or later, but you can probably gain between 50 and 70 pounds of muscle if you give it long enough, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It's not. And if it does, you don't want it to. Any way that you can cut the corners off and make all that money really fast or get all that physical results really fast, you can lose it just as fast. If it can be given to you overnight, it can be taken from you overnight. And that's what a lot of people don't get. You know what I mean? And once you have something to lose, you recognize that maintaining it requires the same process that goes into building it in the first place. Let's say I gain 50 pounds of muscle, and then I start skipping my meals and skipping my workouts. Guess what's going to happen to all that muscle? It's going to go away. Let's say that I accumulate a little bit of wealth and a little bit of movement, and then I hop back on drugs and I start getting high again, and I start spending it on all the things that I wasn't supposed to spend it on. It's all going to be gone very quickly, right? Very quickly. So, the last thing I'll tell you about this process, because to recap, the first thing you want to do is measure your body, measure your finances. The second thing you want to do is run a program. Run that program into the wall until you plateau and you need a more difficult, more extreme program. The last thing I'll tell you is you don't start this to go back to what you were doing before, right? You don't become healthy so that you can be lazy. A lot of people miss that. You don't become wealthy so that you can go back to being broke. Thank you, bro. It's one of my favorite shirts. I love the Rasputin shirt. It's built off of kind of the tarot card. It says the mage, because whether you believe it or not, he was a real mage, man. And since I pretty much recapped and gave the message of this video, I'll give one more piece about Rasputin, because I'm a big fan of Grigory. So, there's a lot of people who have said a lot of very negative things about this man. There's a lot of very awful rumors about Rasputin, right? Now, knowing the type of hatred and gossip and lies that I'm already facing, not being maybe half or a tenth or a hundredth of the power level that somebody like Rasputin was able to achieve, I can imagine what's true and what's not. Now, I wasn't there, but based on my own opinion, the way that I measure a man is by how his spouse feels about him, by how his children feel about him. Now, if you listen to all of Rasputin's offspring, they'll say he was a wonderful man, right? Every time his wife was interviewed, she would say he's an abundant, wonderful man. I think another thing that you can do to measure him is recognize that he was fucking huge physically. He was a huge, physically powerful man. And a lot of that came from the fact that he worked very hard manual labor for the very early stages of his life. He was a farmer, right? Worked a lot of manual labor. And then he worked himself mentally and spiritually all the way over to the palace with the aristocrats. The soft-handed, right? Aristocrats who never worked a day in their life the way that he did early on. So whether you believe it or not, he had the power to probably beat the brakes off of every single one of those priests, off every single one of those noblemen, right? He had the physical power to probably fuck all of them up. And you'll notice that there's not one record of him becoming physically violent. So that's a very disciplined man. Now, he might have drank a lot of alcohol, right? He may have fornicated with a lot of women, but he did it according to his own code of ethics, right? In a way that was agreed upon with his partner, and in a way that he didn't inspire or hurt or corrupt his own children in the wrong direction. So, I think he's I can talk about theosophy sometime also. I'm personally not a fan of Manly P. Hall, or I call her HPV because she's kind of a virus, but Blavatsky. I think that theosophy is a very, very, very cleverly designed distraction. I think that what a lot of those people will do is they'll find somebody on the mystical path, right? And they'll think, all right, this person has already started to figure it out a little bit. So what the school of theosophy will do is they'll publish a book. Now, Blavatsky's works was like this thick. Manly P. Hall's is a little better disguised, right? The Secret Teachings look like a very small, digestible book. Whoever's their person now does the same thing. But if you actually take the time to sit and read these works, it will take you a long time, forever, maybe. Because at the end of it, you'll feel like you have to start it over and read it again. It's a very well-constructed maze that what they'll do is they'll tell you, we're going to give you the secrets of magic. We're going to give you secrets of the Kabbalah. We're going to give you the secrets of the universe. And what they really do is they give you, like if you want to use the Bible as an example, they'll give you the book of Genesis. And that's it. And they'll tell you, here it all is. Here's the whole, all of it. Right? And then you'll sit there and you'll read their little book of Genesis and you'll think to yourself, I just read the whole Bible, right? I just read that whole Bible. Meanwhile, they didn't give you the meat. They didn't give you the potatoes. They didn't give you nothing. No, it's all good. I let the audience kind of guide this type of a thing. And I got the main message out. So I think it's important to mention that I do not really trust or vibe with theosophy at all. I read the Secret Teachings. I started to read Blavatsky's work, and I realized that it's the same type of runaround maze. I see what they do now, where they print their books in these very small books, but with this tiny little text that fills up huge pages, so it might as well be a 1,000-page book disguised as a 200-page book. You know what I mean? And I'll be honest with you, if you get the book of Genesis, that's better than nothing if you're trying to read the Bible, right? So there's something there, but it's very disingenuous, it's very deceptive, almost evil and vampiric to trap somebody in a 1,000-hour book and only give them an hour worth of knowledge. You know what I mean? That's my own personal opinion on the works of theosophy. I think it is a very well disguised trick and trap and maze. And unfortunately, it's positioned in a way that we all run into it on the path, towards alchemy, towards magic, towards those things that we want to study. But if you look at somebody like, Rasputin, a man who arguably figured a lot of it out, who made it there, you can tell even just by his gaze, a mage's eyes will typically be a window into the soul. There's certain pictures of Rasputin where his eyes are piercing. They will pierce through your soul. Now, there's a rumor that he had the ability and the control to dilate and constrict his pupils at will. So you can imagine how impressive it would be if a man looked you in the eyes and then fully dilated his own pupils at will. It would be magical. It would be scary. For some people, it would be demonic, right? So these are just examples that prove if a person made it there or not. But one of my favorite things about Rasputin is his level of physical control. Even when they went to assassinate him, I would absolutely be down. It's very interesting. If you want to tell anything about it, Odin's son, anything you want to mention, I'm down to learn about. But when they went to assassinate Grigory Rasputin, he didn't punch them, he didn't stab them, he just tried to run away, right? They had to poison him, they had to shoot him, they had to drown him, because he had so much vitality and life force built up that none of these attempts to kill him on their own really worked. You know what I mean? So I'd be very interested if he was actually a member of the Order of the Green Dragon, if he actually learned certain things from the Callisti sect, I believe it was called, of Christianity that he studied with the self-flagellation and the different aspects of pain and, self-inflicted torture to become closer to God or the universe, right? The powerful forces. But somebody like Rasputin is very interesting to study because there's not a lot of people who have taken themselves from poverty in the fields to the palace itself, right? And it's no question that he used the powers of seduction to seduce the empress at the time, right? And kind of become the man that she respected most. So if you want to dig into that, well, how is he able to do this? Well, like any mother, she cared about her son, right? She was a mother before she was an empress. And her son had a blood disorder, a blood disease. And nobody in the world was able to cure this or help this, including her husband, the emperor. Till Rasputin comes along and he says, hey, I can heal your son. I know how to heal your son. And he did it. So this is why he was revered and why he was exalted. Because he made a promise and then he delivered. He made a claim that sounded almost magical. And then he showed up and delivered, right? So I'm not a woman, but I can imagine why she kind of fell for him if he was able to actually deliver and protect her son more than her at the time husband or any other male suitor that she maybe had at the time. So besides the fact that Rasputin's predictions almost all came true, So his divination was quite powerful, or the power of his word is weird, that he would speak something and then it would come true. I think Grigory Rasputin is a very powerful mage and an important man to study. Absolutely. Absolutely. He is, whether you see it or not, largely responsible for the end of imperialism in that region. So, it's very relevant to the topic because I'll be honest with you, Rasputin was a man who woke up one day and in his life decided, this isn't going to work for me. This job, this body, this mind, this paycheck, it's not going to work for me. I'd like more out of life. I want more. I need more. I deserve more. I'm capable of more, right? And then he went out and he got it. The same way that when he delivered on his commitment to the Empress, I'd imagine that he looked his wife in the eyes before he went out and pilgrimed in search for the truth, in search for magic. He said to her, I'm going to go find it, and I'm going to be back. And he told the truth. He went out, he found it, he came back, right? So I think these things are very relevant, very important. I don't think it's a coincidence that he used the prevalence of the very strong belief in Christianity to accomplish this, right? He would say that the Virgin Mary would visit him in his dreams and give him messages. Maybe he just said that so people would believe him because he knew they were real. Maybe at night, what he believed to be the Virgin Mary came and spoke to him. Only he knows that, right? But what I see when I look at a man like Grigory Rasputin is a man who first he measured things and he looked at it for real. He didn't lie to himself. And then he found or developed a program to improve these things. And then he took it to the highest level possible, right? Now, before you can be a mage, before you can be healthy, before you can be wealthy, you have to decide, am I going to be a man? Am I going to be a woman? Am I going to be something else, right? That's up to you to decide. But also part of that has been decided for you. Before I'm a coach, before I'm a mage, before I'm a CEO, I am a man, right? And I stick to the tenets of what that means to me. Now, the last video I did talks all about that. If you want to dig into what I think a man is or what a man isn't, what type of man I'd like to be or not like to be. But I appreciate you jumping in, man. It's very useful. No worries. I'll be around. And if you want to catch anything after the fact, I upload all the recordings. But to recap today's message, if you don't have the muscle, the money that you want to have, first look yourself in the mirror and say, I deserve more. I deserve better, right? I'm not in this position because I deserve to finish the game here, right? The last thing I'll tell you have to have throughout this whole process is gratitude. If you have breath, you are blessed, whether you believe that or not. There's a lot of people who their story is over. They don't get to do any more measuring. They don't get to do any programming, and they don't get to do any more. They're done. That's the end of it, right? If you're listening to this video, you're able to do something about it. So you have to recognize that that's the greatest gift of all. Whether you feel powerless or not, you're about as powerful as it gets right now because you're alive and you are yourself. Nobody can do it for you. You're the only one who can. And by the same right, you're the only one who can't if you decide that you're not even going to try. So if you want to improve these things, you're going to have to try. I don't personally believe in what Yoda said. I'm not personally a fan of Yoda at all, but we can get into that at a whole nother time. I don't think you'll even know if you can until you try, right? You miss every shot you don't take, right? So, this is how I see it. What's up, Mateo? How you feeling? How we doing? Happy Sunday, unless you're somewhere else in the world. But That covers the message for today. I'll recap it one more time because I think it's worth doing. And this applies to more than just health and money, but those are most people's areas where they'd like a little more or they need a little more, right? You don't have to take it from anybody else. You don't have to take it from somebody else. There's a lot of people that see me and they think, I'm going to take his money from him. I'm going to take his health from him. You can try, right? I'm still going to have it all. This is how that works. The same way that if I look at somebody who I think has more than me, I have to ask them to either show me the way or share with me the way. Somebody who has more money than me is not going to help me by just giving me money, right? If I was able to slice off a little muscle and just give it to somebody, they wouldn't even know what to do with it, right? They wouldn't eat, they wouldn't train right, it would be gone. So, as much as you might think you want that handout, you want that gift, better than a fish is a fishing rod all day, all day. If somebody gives you enough fish, you'll never even use that fishing rod. Because if you're not hungry, why are you going to go fish for food? You see what I mean? So the last thing that you want to have is gratitude for the hunger, right? If you were completely content on the way that you looked and your fitness level, you wouldn't take any steps to improve that. If you were like, I have all the money I want and need, you wouldn't try to spend it smarter or make more of it, right? So there's a sweet spot between gratitude and hunger. You want to deploy both. That's what people mean when they say stay hungry. That's what people mean when they say be gratitude. You know what I mean? Well, that's what's up. You're in Shy. I didn't know that. Much love. I've never been there before, but it seems like a very cool place with a very strong people, man. Very interesting. There's a lot of similarities between Philadelphia and Chicago, but there's also some very real differences, without a doubt. Without a doubt. Very interesting, man. I would love to get out there and visit sometime. If I had some friends out there, I would pop out. Absolutely. But the same way that anybody wants to come visit Philadelphia, see the Liberty Bell, see the Seeds of Freedom, as it's called. That's what it's for over here, man. That's what it's for. But one thing that Philadelphia and Chicago do have in common is you want to keep your wits about you. It doesn't hurt to keep a piece of metal on you, and you want to stay smart. You want to stay dangerous, right? Going back to what I was talking to about earlier. There's a lot of people that might see what you have and want to take it from you. Part of keeping what you have is not letting people do that. You know, that's where you recognize that a path of fitness, a path of wealth, the farther away you get from the majority of the population, the more hatred and jealousy you will actually incite. So that's where it becomes almost a responsibility to create a path or a vehicle to share that with other people, or you won't deserve it and it will go to somebody who does. You know what I mean? Somebody who accumulates those and these things with the intention of sharing the way is going to get a lot farther than somebody who tries to keep it all for themselves or take it from other people, because the laws of nature don't really forgive that. You might get away with it a couple times, but that's not how you build a whole pyramid, right? You don't sneak bricks into the pyramid. Imagine if a pyramid of that size, if somebody was trying to hide it from everybody. Imagine if when the largest pyramid in Egypt was being built, if the Pharaoh tried to hide that from his people. Sooner or later, they're going to find out about it, right? Sooner or later, people are going to see it and understand it. So when it comes to fitness, when it comes to wealth, the goal is also not to hide and hoard that from everybody else. Sooner or later, they're going to notice. They're going to see it. It's just part of the deal. So the final piece of it all, to bring it all together, first you have to measure accurately. My favorite way is with a pen and paper or a notebook. Then you need a program. My favorite way is pick a coach, right? Then you want to refine that over time. Refine. Eventually, you might need a new program or a new coach if you ever outgrow the one that you have, right? But that's why what I do personally is I'm always taking that next step, because I realize that there's a lot of people who I train and coach. And if they run my program and I don't, pretty soon they're going to be past me. And then why would they listen to a thing I say or want my coaching at all? You know what I mean? If they've already passed me. So, is it a race? Sure. But it's more like a relay race where you don't realize that this baton that you put together, you want somebody to hand it to before that light goes out, before the end, right? I study Kobe Bryant a lot. He's one of my favorite athletes and men. May he rest in peace. If you study him throughout his career, when he started out, it was all about me being the best. Once he had solidified, I am great, maybe even the best of my era, everything that he would think and talk about would be passing that baton, inspiring the next generation of great men and great athletes, right? Because he had a level of altitude where he could see the big picture and he realized what really mattered and what really didn't, right? So that's about all I have to say about that. If somebody has some questions, I will answer them. But that's the gist of what to do if you find yourself what people will call broke, if you find yourself out of shape. And I think those words can be a little negative. So one of the first things you want to do is reframe that into it could be worse, right? I could be dead. So much love. Stay safe. Stay dangerous. Anything you ever want to ask me, you can go ahead and ask. My Instagram is Andrew_Prometheus. If you want to send me a message there, I will always read it and reply. And happy Sunday to y'all. Prometheus out.